Hey, we're back, folks. I'm your host, BKP. Good morning from the office, North Georgia's only live online morning show. And don't forget, tomorrow is Election Day. I know July is vacation month, but don't forget we have an election going off, a Republican runoff, and we have three major, look around your county, your local county. You have a lot of runoff elections for commissioners and Board of Education and so forth. But here on the state level, we have a Secretary of State, Lieutenant Governor, and Governor runoff on the Republican side of the ticket. And what we're doing this morning is we're talking about the Georgia governor's race. And joining me now is former Trump state chair and former Georgia GOP chair, Sue Everhart. Miss Everhart, are you with us?
I'm with you.
Would you be upset if I call you Sue?
No, I'd love for you to. It makes me feel young.
Okay. Well, let's just go right into it, and that's what we're doing today. Why are you supporting Casey Cagle for governor? Why do you think he should be the next governor of Georgia?
Well, a little history. Both of these gentlemen, when they both came into office about the same time as I became chairman of the GOP, I worked with both. Casey was a hard worker. He supported the party. He supported the people in the party. And I don't recall Brian Kemp ever coming to the state GOP except to ask for support. He never came to give his support to us. So that's my first reason for supporting Casey, is he supports the people that brought him to the dance. I think that he's done a great job with pushing not education just for K-5 through 12. He has supported, once people grow up and they can't afford to go to college, he's worked on a way to educate them through our technical college. He has supported the governor. He's been able to keep order in the Georgia Senate. And I can tell you, Kemp, I know from experience, anything that's happened in the Secretary of State's office since he became the Secretary of State was either started or completed by Karen Handel when she was the Secretary of State. I was left hanging out several times on the qualifying days, and I had Secretary Kemp's personal phone number. I couldn't find it. And there we were trying to handle things. I don't think Kemp can handle his personal and business life. How can he handle the Georgia life and being governor of Georgia? I think that Casey has the experience. I don't know of any experience that the Secretary of State's office really gives you in running the state of Georgia. And I feel like if we don't elect Casey Cagle, we're going to end up fighting tooth and nail to elect Brian Kemp, and we're not going to be able to do it because Stacey Abrams, I don't think she's the smartest woman on the planet, but she certainly has a lot of money behind her. And let's face it, politics is a lot of money and getting to the finish line. And so I believe totally in Casey. I know his family. I met his wife 12 years ago now, and I'm very impressed with her support for him. And he's just been a champion and a driving force behind Georgia politics and the Republican Party. And I just think that we are lucky. We would be lucky to elect him as the next governor of Georgia. If we don't elect him, I think there's going to be a dismal outcome for Georgia on election night in November. Even though I support heavily Donald Trump, I supported him from day one. I don't know why he is out there for Brian Kemp. I doubt he would know Brian Kemp if he passed him on the street. But I really don't. And, of course, he knows Casey Cagle. and a lot of the things that both of them are talking about that they support, I think Casey has walked the walk. I do not think Brian Kemp has.
So let me ask you a question, because you put a lot into that, and I appreciate it. You really opened up a lot of subjects, because we're in a primary, and all due respect, I please forgive me if I sound like I'm explaining this to you. You know it all too well, as the former chair of the GOP in Georgia, about getting these candidates elected. And in the primary, there's the move to the, my words, move to the right and then back to the center, and you have to be elected in November. All of this is worthless if you don't get elected in November. But something you kept saying that I want you to try to explain for me and voters is, you say Casey's experienced. And I'm going to agree with having the experience, leading the Senate. There's a lot of work out there that has not come to the surface, that somebody, if you're lieutenant governor, you do have that experience. But recently in our political climate, experience has been translated into what some are calling the establishment. So could you cut between what some try to label establishment and experience, and why Casey Cagle is the experience is what you're saying we need in the next governor?
Yes. Every time there's a race for dog catcher, right on up to the President of the United States, we talk about the establishment. The establishment is the grassroots of Georgia in this particular case. They are the people that get out and vote. If we couldn't depend on the independents, we couldn't elect anybody. Casey Cagle has run his races. He's always ran them with integrity. I think that he understands the way the system works. And let's face it, politics is politics. There's always that way of doing things and getting things done. Casey knows how to get things done. And I think that people listen to Casey. I don't know, I think a month ago, I wouldn't even worry about who was going to win the governor's race. I don't know who's going to win it tomorrow night. I hope for the sake of the established Georgia people that it is Casey Cagle. If it's not, like all good established Republicans, I'm going to work for the next Republican governor of Georgia. Not because he's maybe the best man for the job, but he is who the people chose. When the people speak, that is what we have to do. How many people would have ever believed that Donald Trump would be president of the United States? I hoped and I prayed, but it did happen. But and I think that it appears that both men are pretty well positioned to win this race tomorrow night. I hope for Georgia's sake that it is Casey Cagle. It is a dismal future for Georgia if Brian Kemp wins.
Tell me a little bit, Sue. Tell me a little bit. You said you hoped and prayed, and I do know that. I do know that to be true, because with social media and how everybody puts things online, I actually have only met you personally one time at a Gilmer County GOP Christmas party. You were the speaker that night. I got a chance to meet you briefly in person, and once or twice in passing at a rally. But I do know you did endorse and support the President of the United States. How early on did you endorse Donald Trump, and what was your position with the President? Did you ever get a chance to meet him as candidate Trump?
Yes, I did. I introduced him to 15,000 people at the World Congress Center when he was running. I'm very proud of it. I was one of the early endorsers of Donald Trump in Georgia. It was Bubba McDonald, myself, and Senator Williams, I think, were the first people that in Georgia that had been held a statewide office that did endorse Donald Trump. I'm still not sorry that I did. While endorsed Donald Trump early on was, I wrote down, and I do this a lot, each one of all those candidates, what was it, 8 or 9 that was running, and what they brought to the table and what they left on the table. And Donald Trump was not a politician. Americans are tired of politicians. They want a leader. And that's why I'm supporting Casey. Casey is a leader. And that's what I felt that Donald Trump was. He has proven, I mean, he keeps things stirred up in Washington all the time. And sometimes he opens his mouth when it would be better to keep it closed. But he runs the government like he runs his business or ran his business before he was president. And nobody can deny that he's been very successful in business. And I think he will go down in history as one of the finest presidents we've ever had.
Well, I want to say, I do want to say this. I admire the fact that you got to introduce Donald Trump. I endorsed him from the time he came down the escalator. Now, when he came down that escalator and he stood in front of that podium, I endorsed the President of the United States that day. And I don't endorse candidates. I do not endorse any candidates in state or local races, but I support the president from that time. So I admire the fact you got to introduce him to 18,000, and I appreciate, I will say this to you, that I have this opportunity. I appreciate that you and Bubba, and I remember when he came out, and also Senator Williams, I appreciate you guys getting on board so early. And that's why I wanted to talk to you today, is because I know your enthusiasm for the president, and not to be redundant, but you just commented a minute ago, do you have any idea, or does the Cagle campaign have any idea why the president would come out and support Brian Kemp when people much like yourself are endorsing, supporting, and even the NRA supporting Casey Cagle?
I'm sure that they do. I've got my opinions, which I'm going to keep my opinion because I don't want to get into a war in Georgia politics. But I think mostly it came out of Washington. He was asked to do it, and I think that he did it. And quite frankly, until after the primaries are over, I wish the president will stay out of politics. But had he endorsed Casey Cagle, I would be shouting it from the rooftops. So I'm sure that the Kemp people are very happy there. But the president hasn't had he didn't have a good week when he endorsed Kemp, and I don't think he's going to. I think that the country is busier looking at Kavanaugh that's running that he's presented for the Supreme Court. I think there's a lot of things out there they're looking at, and they're not going to. The nation is not paying a lot of attention to what he did in Georgia. Now, Georgians, there are some people that do not like Trump. I had one person say, "Well, I was supporting Kemp, but not if Donald Trump's going to support." I said, well, I'm glad to hear that. And so, but had it been Casey, I would have had defense on that. But I really think that Georgia needs to elect a governor, and I think Casey Cagle will work with the president. I think the president will work with Casey. But Georgia needs Casey Cagle. They really do.
You know, I want to ask this before we wrap up. I appreciate I told you we'd run about 20 minutes. Now, when you said the president stay out of the primaries, and you know all too well the party, you know, staying out of primaries until you get a nominee, you know that as well as anybody. You know, when you say that, should not have Nathan Deal, the governor, stayed out? Isn't that kind of something that kind of ruffled some underlying Republican feathers across the state, because the governor said he intended to stay out of this race, and he endorsed like 2 days before the president. He endorsed Casey Cagle on a Monday, and the president came out and endorsed Brian Kemp on Wednesday. I mean, how do you feel Governor Nathan Deal's endorsement will affect the race, and will it be able to help Casey?
Well, I think that Governor Deal, when I said to stay out of Georgia politics, I said for the president, for Washington. Governor Deal is Georgia. He has worked with Casey Cagle. He knows what Casey has learned and what he's done to support him. And everybody knows in the state of Georgia that the governor and I have not always been the best of friends. But I cannot deny that he has been one of the best governors we've ever had. And for Nathan Deal to come out and support Casey, it tells me that he feels like that it was something he had to do because we were heading down the wrong path with Brian Kemp. Brian was starting to pick up in the polls, and the governor did what a good governor does. He wants to support Georgia and leave Georgia in better hands than he found it. And I think Sonny Perdue was a great governor, and Sonny was very nice to me when I was chairman, very supportive. And but the governor, once he became governor and we got through our little problem, he worked well with me. So I think the governor did what he thought that he needed to do to leave Georgia in good hands, and he supports Casey Cagle because he feels like those are the better hands to handle Georgia.
Well, Ms. Everhart, I want to thank you so much for taking the time today and appreciate you talking to our viewers. And I always tell people, you're not talking to me, you're talking to our viewers and the voters, and we appreciate when people take time to do that. And it's not hard to figure out. You're pretty firm in the fact that you think Casey Cagle should be the next governor of Georgia.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Ms. Everhart. I appreciate you so much. You have a wonderful day out there campaigning, because I know you will be.
Well, thank you for giving me the time to talk about Casey Cagle.
I appreciate it. Okay, that has been our guest, Sue Everhart. Sue Everhart was former GOP chair during the time of Sonny Perdue, and as Nathan Deal was coming in as governor of Georgia. So that's Sue Everhart, and she is the former state Trump state chair, which I have to tell you, that's an exciting thing to get to. Probably most exciting, one of the most exciting things in your life, and top 10 maybe, to get to stand on the stage at the World Congress Center and introduce, at that time, candidate Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States. I do know Miss Everhart, it was early on, very early on in supporting the president of the United States. I want to say her quote, but if I can remember it correctly, she said she didn't think the president would know Donald Trump. No, she didn't think the president would know Brian Kemp if he passed him on the street. So that being said, we're going to get ready to go to a second break, and then we're going to have now. And my next guest that'll round out today's show is Republican candidate for Lieutenant Governor, David Schaefer. Okay. David Schaefer, so here's what, have you watched all of these ads for against each other on Lieutenant Governor Schaefer and Jeff Duncan? And I really don't want to do any more than, if you haven't had a chance to meet David Schaefer, out from under all of this nonsense of 30 seconds and 60 seconds on the air. If you have not had a chance to meet him, I want to give you this opportunity this morning. We're doing everything we can. It's Georgia Politics Morning. And I want to give you an opportunity to meet David Schaefer. And we want to talk a little bit like this crazy thing. What does a lieutenant governor do? If one of those ads would just mention that the lieutenant governor is elected by the people because they're next in line to be governor, you know, if for any reason need be. And they set committees, they set committee chairs, they're instrumental in what legislation goes to the floor. It's a big job, but all you hear is the trash on TV that a lot of it I just do not, I don't agree with it, okay, because I do know Mr. Schaefer. This is not an endorsement. But Mr. Duncan's ads or a political action committee that he supposedly has no control over, okay, has really done some nasty stuff where this lieutenant governor's race is. I want to address one thing. You know, Vice President put up Pence